The outline of the planning system, we wanted to create a system that had a clear mandate. We had to have the culture that supported the delivery of that mandate. And we definitely needed to have the processes in place that got us to the outcomes of our mandate. And as well, the outcome focus, a lot of discussion on how we should center that and how it should be developed. And we settled on our new municipal development plan. There are 7 broad goals in the municipal development plan. And that's generally speaking at the higher level, at the system level, those are the outcomes we're shooting for. And we're not just going to focus on the outputs, how many permits and how many days or how many acreages approved in so many weeks. It's going to be more focused on the goals of the MDP. And as well, it's meant to be the process to develop the outline of the planning system was a dynamic process. We worked extensively with stakeholders on an ongoing process throughout it. Now, the continuously piloting applications, the goals there were that stakeholders would have a shared perspective of the process. They would understand with clarity about the decision points, the decision gates within the process, and there would be a good articulated explanation and rationale for the decisions that were made within the approval process. Now, how did we get to our goals? Now, the outline of the planning system, a big part of that was our consulting group helping us get there. And we used a technique that was very powerful called dynamic incompleteness. So we would come to a stakeholders group, we'd come to a working group meeting with more of a framework, more of a shell, and it would have sort of highlights and key features that you wanted to discuss. And this was mostly based on the shared perspective we originally had from the fall, and then also comments and commentary from the current system. So we would have our initial shell, we would have discussion with the working group, and then we would have a stakeholder discussion about it. And then they would add components, they would add pieces to it. And then we would take that back, we would work with it, and then again, take that back out to a stakeholders group, vet it again, have more discussion. So as we went forward, we had more and more discussion, more and more little components added by various groups. And that gave more ownership to the various stakeholder groups, but also gave it a lot of richness and a lot of diversity in its construction. Now, in this process, we did have 15 workshops with 400 attendees, and that was from April and May of this year. As well, we did do 11 presentations to about 400 attendants with Q&As and answers and commentary after as well. And as well, we did have about, we have a dozen outfitting sessions. And outfitting is what we call talking about the culture that supports the new planning system. So in those outfitting sessions, we reached out to about 100 city staff members and about 100 external from the City of Calgary members. Now, for the continuously piloting applications, since February, we received about 20 applications, and these are primarily development permit applications. And these are real applications where there is a development authority decision or a land use decision by council. But these applications were sort of test piloted. They were gone through a process where the pilot team, they would look at new way of processing things, looking at new ways to have dialogue, new way to have dialogue with the community associations, new way to have dialogue within the different specialists within the City of Calgary. And it worked really well. In the applications we processed from February to July, there was a 50% time saving in these applications. So it was not only about time improvement, we also had much higher levels of satisfaction from the applicant and the communities that were involved in these applications. So there was a great understanding. They expressed much more appreciation of the decision points, where they were made, the rationale behind the decisions, and there was a much more support for the way the decision was reached. And it was a much more sort of discussion around the outcome, the value of the application to the community, the value of the application to the goals of the planning department, the goals of the MDP. So this discussion actually led to a lot more education and understanding of all the people involved in the process, and that was both within the city and also external staff. Now, in July, Calgary City Council did review our planning outline and the progress we had made on the pilot applications. At that time in July, they endorsed our new planning outline, which is the image you see on the right-hand side of the slide here, or the left-hand side of the slide. Now, the planning outline, I'm not going to get into that detail about the system, but it does detail a high-level system approach to planning within the City of Calgary. But probably the most important thing, the primary thing that surrounds it, and that's the gray circle that surrounds the outline, is the culture that supports the planning system, because you can have a great system, you can have great policy, you can have great bylaws, but if you don't have that collaboration, that innovative, that strong approach to communicate, to work together well, the best bylaws and the best systems aren't going to work. So surrounding our new outline is a real drive to have a culture of transparency, collaboration, innovation, accountability, trust, and responsibility. And within the City of Calgary staff and going outreach and education to the community, we're going to build more and more avenues, opportunities for that culture to happen more and more. And that'll support the internal mechanisms, which you see inside the circle there. Now going forward, back to our working group, they helped us decide the next 3 projects that would take us to the end of the year. The Transforming Planning project wraps up at the end of 2013. So between July and December, the 3 projects we're continuing to work on is more pilot program applications. We're going to define and design a decision framework, and that's going to be more discussion around development authority, subdivision authority, committees of council. And also it's the transition to the new planning system. So the system we see described in the graphic, how do we actually take our current system to get to that? What staff needs to be in place? How do we align staff? How do we align policy? Do we need to update policy? And we're going to be working on that between now and December. So at the end of the year, the program we have in place is handed off to city staff, and council will have to receive some recommendations. But at the end of the year, the program will hand off to staff and the council to go forward.
All right, so both Kim and I are going to speak to Edmonton's experience. I'm going to start here. And we're really going to talk about what we're doing to rethink and revamp our planning mandate, culture, and processes. We're taking a different approach than Calgary, incorporating changes and pursuing outcome-based planning through a number of different projects at a variety of scales. The Designing New Neighbourhoods project is the primary, sort of most obvious example of this new approach. The purpose of the project was to develop design guidelines for our new suburban communities. Council asked us for these guidelines in 2012. They didn't tell us, though, tell us exactly how to approach this work. So we took this opportunity as a city to approach policy and policy development differently, to approach it on a way that really focused on a big picture level, big picture understanding of what we as a city fundamentally want our communities to be, in a way that focused on what we want them to achieve instead of looking at the specifics of, say, block dimensions, dwelling densities, and percentage mix of different land uses. We focused also on building this understanding collaboratively with our stakeholders and city building partners. And there's a few reasons why we did this. The first is that we recognize that planning is changing, and also that we can't really predict what the future holds or imagine that we can manage it through regulations alone. We can't know what changes will come, and frankly, we don't know what today's 5- and 6-year-olds want in a future community. We can, though, articulate and we can know what we want our future neighborhoods to achieve. We also took this approach because we desire more innovative design and more creativity in neighborhood planning, the kind of design that hasn't come through the rote application of regulations, and that will not come to pass without more partnership and an ability and desire to take risks and to think outside of our box. We need this innovation and we need this new thinking to realize our vision of becoming a vibrant, more livable, and world-class place. We need to act on the opportunities that we do have to do things differently. We see the 6,500 hectares of land slated for urban development in our 3 urban growth areas as a significant opportunity. An opportunity for us to take a new approach and build great new neighborhoods from the ground up for up to 150,000 of our neighbors, friends, colleagues, and families. So the last one I'll tell you about, and I don't have a slide for it, it's much more humbling. As a city, we tried a more traditional or prescriptive approach to design guidelines a few years back, and frankly, it didn't take. So today, I'm going to really tell you less about the design guidelines themselves, and I'll tell you more about what it meant for us to take a new approach to planning policy and policy development. And Kim will also tell us about what it will mean to take a new approach to implementation. So to start, the first element of this new approach that I'll tell you about is a vision. The design guidelines do not lay out rules for neighborhood design. They don't provide a static design template. Instead, they articulate the shared vision for what we as a city want future neighborhoods to achieve. A vision that calls for integrated and diverse neighborhoods, long-term sustainability and innovation, and communities with character and a distinct sense of place. At the heart of this vision, at the heart of our collaborative efforts to create it with our stakeholders and city building partners, is a desire for flexibility and creativity. A recognition that there is no one equation, no one blueprint or recipe for a successful neighborhood. There are many block patterns, many housing forms, and many combinations of amenities that can combine to create a welcoming and sustainable place. Again, while we don't know exactly what the future will bring, we can articulate, we can know what qualities we want that future to provide. The Designing New Neighborhoods guidelines articulate these qualities, this vision, through a set of 12 neighborhood outcomes. These outcomes define and describe desired end results, results that really can only be fully realized when our communities are built out, up to 30 years from now. Together, these illustrate what we can collectively expect new neighborhoods to deliver for residents, families, local communities, home builders, developers, and the city. Each of these outcomes is accompanied by a set of design principles. The document contains a total of 38 of these. These principles will guide the planning and design of each new neighborhood in our 3 urban growth areas. The guidelines, though, don't say exactly how this must be done within each new neighborhood. Instead, they provide a variety of design ideas for consideration and to get people thinking about how to apply them in different contexts. We believe that it's this flexibility and this openness to possibilities that will foster creativity and innovation in our new neighborhoods. So it's also important to note that the form of the guidelines themselves, the way outcomes and principles are organized, and frankly, the way they were developed, forces us to think about our neighborhoods more holistically as systems, instead of breaking them up into their individual parts and components. So while some outcomes and principles really do speak more to transportation than, for example, land use, all of the outcomes consider multiple neighborhood elements together: parks, streets, land use, urban design, infrastructure, and the like. They really force us to integrate our thinking and, again, to think outside of our boxes. Now, to develop these guidelines, this new form of outcome-based policy also required a different approach to stakeholder consultation. What it required was a great deal of collaboration. There's an entire session tomorrow dedicated to this process. It's called Design by Committee, so I won't get into too much detail here. What I will say is that we brought together 30 individuals from inside and outside of the administration over the course of 12 months to develop this shared vision. So we drew on the collective wisdom of this group as well as that of Edmontonians, and were able to successfully bring forward a new policy for City Council in May of this year, with the design team's full support as well as Council's full support. For this multidisciplinary team to come together and develop a vision, all of us had to let go in some way. We had to look past existing standards and processes. We had to let go of individual business areas and specialties. And we had to let go of the notion that there is only one best way to achieve our goals and only one best way to design and build a great new community. Implementing this vision is going to require an equal, if not greater, amount of collaboration, a future-focused design approach, and a high tolerance for risk on all sides. It will require us to continue, again, to rethink our mandate, our culture, and our processes. The Designing New Neighborhoods policy itself and the process to develop it set this expectation. They really planted the seeds of change, begun to nurture the new relationships that we'll need to move ahead, and created a new shared focus for new neighborhood planning. To realize their vision for great new neighborhoods will require city builders to continue to work together differently, to collaborate, to partner, and to share both the risks and the rewards that change can bring. I'll end my piece of this presentation by noting that this shift is happening as we speak. It's being advanced as stakeholders gather today in Edmonton to begin to create a vision for the first new neighborhood that will use the Designing New Neighborhoods guideline and approach as its base. So that's very exciting for us. But with that, I'll hand things over to Kim, who's really going to speak more to how this vision for great new neighborhoods will be realized and other ways the city is working to change the way we do our planning.
So what are we going to do to implement this outcome-based approach in Edmonton? Preparation for the first neighborhood structure plans have started, as Lisa indicated, for a neighborhood up in our northeast area. We can expect 3 more new neighborhoods down in our Riverview area structure plan, and in a new area structure plan for this southeast portion of Edmonton has just been submitted. So that will again result in more neighborhood structure plans being prepared in the not so distant future. Our neighborhood structure plan terms of reference is also being updated, which will be used to create these plans, and the design guidelines will inform the preparation of those plans. As Lisa said, the vision is comprised of 12 desired outcomes, each of which is accompanied by a set of principles. These are intended to be applied with flexibility to the planning and design of our new neighborhoods. It is expected that a neighborhood structure plan will address each principle through specific plan policies that is unique to the context and vision for a neighborhood, with more emphasis potentially on certain principles. It's encouraged to highlight the uniqueness of an area, and it will ensure that each outcome is realized. Here's an example of how this might work. For the outcome, all neighborhoods embrace all seasons. The principle being plan for weather and all seasonal conditions through street building and open space design. This can be achieved in a new neighborhood in a variety of ways, and some design ideas might be to plan for site and street orientation to take advantage of solar heat and block north winds, or designing parks and open spaces to provide useful, interesting, and engaging environments year-round, for instance, by considering winter space activities. This means that each new neighborhood may approach connectivity, all-season design, resource efficiency in different ways. Creative and innovative approaches must be supported, which means all city builders, being our developers, our city staff, and our communities, need to collectively work together to realize these outcomes and our desire for more innovation, flexibility, and sustainability in new neighborhood design. It's a platform for change to see how we design these future neighborhoods and how we work together to develop vibrant and exciting places. It recognizes that real change in how we develop our neighborhoods, our city will require us to do different things differently and move past the complacency, inflexibility, fear of risk, and adversarial relationships to make progress towards our goals. To realize this new vision, we have to embrace risk, partnerships, innovation, and flexibility. As a city, we have to be committed to this change and revisit and adapt our old ways. Our mandate to achieve these outcomes will force our processes to be more collaborative. So as Lisa indicated, I'm missing the first visioning exercise today that's happening for the northeast, a new neighborhood plan up in northeast part of Edmonton, which I'm a senior planner in that unit. So I've been thinking about what's going to be different this time. How will this plan be different? How are we going to take this new policy approach and have a different outcome? And so I've been talking to our partners, the applicant team. I said to them, well, how are we going to engage in a collaborative process this time? What would that look like to you? And this person said to me, well, what if we had a design charrette and developed the neighborhood structure plan that way? Okay, well, that's a good idea. We bring together all our stakeholders, and see what we can come up with. But then he said, well, as long as everyone understands that the developer doesn't have to do what we come up with. So I thought, okay, so what's the point of that? And then I was talking to a coworker about this visioning exercise and how this policy is a starting point for change, how things were going to be different this time, and because of what the policy is and how it was developed. And the coworker responded to me saying, well, nothing's going to be different this time. It's going to be same old, same old. So I thought, okay, what can we do? What does rethinking culture, what does rethinking mandate and rethinking process mean to you or me, professional planners working in an office, day to day doing our work? And I think Mr. Hume, Gordon Hume, the speaker this morning, kind of summed it up quite nicely. Planners don't have to always be the rule enforcers, but enablers of creative design. I think as planners, we're the project managers, we're the facilitators, we're kind of that person in the middle of the engineers, the consultants, the technical people, and we bring that all together to set the stage to build a great city. If we don't act collaboratively, then what can we expect of our partners? If a project will help realize our vision and our outcomes, then we need to find a way to make it happen. Change through our new planning system or our policy approach can take time, but it can actually start with each of us today. This means teamwork, collaborating, trust, building relationships, and communicating, and It's a lot of flash words that we've been hearing all afternoon, but we have to bring it to our work. Don't think about all the reasons to say no, but what needs to be done to say yes. So I'm just going to briefly take you through an example of a project of mine that I worked on of how rethinking culture, mandate, rethinking process produced a really successful outcome. I'm going to speak to you about a neighborhood just southeast of downtown. Strathern is a mature neighborhood. It was built in the 50s and 60s. It's predominantly single-family homes, but there's a large site in the middle, and this is our downtown over here. This is the large site in the middle of this neighborhood that's built currently with 3-story walk-up apartment buildings. There was a site-specific zoning application that was done back in 2008, and it included 2 years of public consultation. It allowed for, the zoning was approved eventually, so a lot of the big hurdles that I'm going to talk about have already kind of been done, but it allowed for the comprehensive redevelopment of this site to accommodate 1,750 units in a variety of housing forms, ranging from row housing around the outside, building up height to 4 towers in the middle. Construction of this project has never started because of the changing economic and housing condition in 2008. In 2011, our council approved a plan for a new LRT route, which put a stop rate basically at the front door of this development site, so down along this road. The owner and the developer, the owner/developer, I'll use those terms interchangeably, called me shortly after. He wanted to make some changes to the zone that would improve the site development economics and improve the site as a transit-oriented development. He was proposing more units, more commercial, higher buildings, and to reduce some major public infrastructure contributions he had previously committed to. So I heard, okay, he's trying to make more money, the city's going to get screwed, and the community's going to lose their mind. I spent some time thinking about how to facilitate this application and why would I even think about supporting it. I felt the owner was asking too much and giving too little. And I kind of wondered, why couldn't they just build 1 unit before they started asking for more? So then I realized I needed him and he needed me, and it wasn't because we were in love, but it was because we were both trying to build a great city. It's a story about an applicant, a community, and a city, an administration that were trying to achieve these outcomes. The City of Edmonton wants to transform our urban form, resulting in increased density, revitalizing vibrant neighborhoods with a transportation master plan that is looking to integrate our transportation network. I had to spend some time understanding the developer's perspective. Why were they proposing these changes? Why was the timing of this so important? I needed to build relationships with the community. They needed to have a same understanding about what the changes were, what was being proposed, and what would we collectively be achieving. Also building an understanding with our city departments and our agencies about the changes, because changes to one department could be viewed negatively, and but not necessarily when looking at the big picture. We created a process. It was a process that focused on outcomes and accountability. We had early review conversations with the applicant and involved the community about all of the scope of changes. Public engagement process was collectively endorsed by the applicant, the community, and the city administration. Timelines were generally set for each step, and everyone involved was held accountable. This included the applicant, the community, and city departments. So just briefly for your interest, some of the key changes. We're realigning a road here to make a better direct link to the future LRT station on the south side of the site. There was some, the increase in units resulted in some higher heights in the buildings along the street, and some added commercial space allowed for a small grocery store to be constructed here. A decision was made by City Council to approve these changes. The Community League attended the public hearing and spoke in support of the changes and the collaborative process that we had embarked on. The decision clearly supported the vision for the municipal development plan and our transportation master plan. The project does increase density in an established neighborhood. It enhances public space, parks, and roads, and the area will better integrate with the LRT stop. As a city, we're moving past our old school ways, so perhaps everyone can identify with one of the images up here. And we're not doing old school ways, and not doing things because this is the way we have always done it, but rethinking our culture, rethinking our mandates, and rethinking our processes through this new policy approach that Lisa spoke of, but also on how we do our day-to-day work. Thank you.